You're listening to Boomers Today with your host, Frank Sampson.
Well, welcome to Boomers Today. I'm your host, Frank Sampson. Of course, each week we bring you important and very useful information on issues facing baby boomers, their parents, and other loved ones. And as I do on each show, I thank all of you. And I thank all of you because our listeners are growing each and every day because of you. So many of you share individual podcasts or our entire show with friends and family, and keep up the good work. We really appreciate that. And so, as I say, our listeners are growing, which allows us to bring on great guests. And I'm not going to disappoint you today. We have with us Steve Benton. Steve helps older adults avoid the dangers of financial uncertainty and exploitation as an elder financial safety center, financial coach, and counselor at the Senior Source. He specializes in complex cases, including fraud, scams, and elder financial abuse. Steve has been active in the financial services industry for over 40 years, including participation on industry boards, business conduct committees, and as a securities industry arbitrator. So Steve, thank you so much for joining us on Boomers Today. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, Frank, pleasure being with you this morning.
Yeah, it's I know we have about a half-hour show, but I think we could probably talk about all this stuff for hours, which unfortunately we're not going to do. So, a lot to go over. So, the target for these scammers are probably are more seniors, and it's probably because of their seniors' vulnerability. Why do you think seniors are so vulnerable to this type of thing?
Well, there's a couple of things that work there, Frank. A lot of people don't realize that 70% of all the assets in this country are owned by baby boomers and above. And the youngest baby boomer is turning 60 this year. So that's the 60 plus has the majority of the assets. And it's at the same time that cognitive declines start. They're having trouble keeping up with technology advances that are happening so rapidly. And so they are a perfect target. It's the perfect storm. And so that's what's happening. And elder scams and frauds are just wreaking havoc on this population because it is the most underreported crime out there today because people are so embarrassed about their losses and so forth.
Right. I mean, I know one of the biggest challenges, and we've had people from AARP and others, talk about this and all the statistics, and, being in the industry myself, I see it. I don't need any of the statistics to show me that probably one of the greatest challenges today with seniors is isolation, loneliness, so many of them, being alone. Would you say that that's a big culprit as well? I mean, that's
been a dramatic change in our population. Yeah. When you look in 1960, there was only 7 million people that actually lived alone, and now that is 38 million people. A lot of them are seniors that are trying hard to age in place in their homes, and they are isolated. You've already focused on that, and so they're just increasingly vulnerable because of that. They're lonely and susceptible to phone calls and other advances toward them. So, yeah. But one of the big challenges also is the longevity risk. I do a lot of financial planning lectures also, and what's happening with these tremendous medical advances in specifically cancer and in heart, people are living longer. And the longevity literacy is very poor out there. People aren't realizing they're getting so many extra years and they're having to stretch their money. So that causes them to not necessarily be more careful, but to look for opportunities in places they shouldn't be looking. Yeah. But anyway, it's that's part of the risk of aging. And we're hearing more and more about cognitive difficulties. The statistics you probably shared with the AARP people and so forth on your show is that by age 65, it's 1 in 10 begin to experience that. And by the time you're 85, when you get these extra 20 years, because that's what you get by turning 65, you're pretty much 50% plus going to make it to 85. That statistic is 1 in 3 that start experiencing this. And so I always try to reach out to the baby boomer children that you better start watching your parents and get involved with them. You can't do that from a distance. You need to find out what's going on in their finances, because the stories are incredible. And when the children come into my office and all the money is gone from their parents, it's a tough row to hoe to get them in shape to survive. And, I don't want to talk too much. I'm used to talking a lot, but, we hear about these boomerang kids that come back to live with the parents. Suddenly we're starting to see boomerang parents that cannot survive on their own and are having to move in with their children. So
Right.
Interesting.
Right. Speaking about that, I don't know if you know percentages, but, is some of the abuse actually coming from within the family itself?
Yeah, you break it down into two parts. Frankly, fraud and scams are definitely coming from outsiders, and those are people that are strangers. You'll probably never meet them. For sure, you'll never meet them face to face. And so that's the stranger aspect of it. But the perpetrator of financial abuse is obviously somebody that the family, caregiver, supposed trusted friends. And that is really the financial abuse of somebody That's probably 61% of my, probably 61, it's pretty exacting. But last year, 61% of my cases were power of attorneys run amok, mom's in memory care, and daughter's out spending all of her money on herself under a POA. So we get involved with situations like that constantly.
Yeah. So hopefully there's a, small amount of that, but it does exist. But let's talk about family members that do care and are looking at the best interest for their parents or other loved ones. What suggestions do you have for them if the parent is just getting older, becoming more, like you said, getting a certain age where they're just a little more vulnerable, and the adult son or daughter, wants to talk to them about this, but at the same time, that vulnerable senior still feels that they're independent, they want to be independent, and they have every right to try to be independent, right? So how do you talk to them? How do you, get the point across without talking down to them, to that senior, so they would, pay attention to some of these things? And we're going to talk about, I know, particular instances that we're seeing seniors being taken advantage of. But what's the best approach in your opinion?
Well, I think the best approach, Frank, and that's a great question, is not to just confront them and say, "Gosh, mom, gosh, dad, you're getting old. We need to start taking over your finances." And that's going to get rejected almost every time, because they don't want to give up their independence. We have a saying at the Senior Source that if you thought taking dad's car keys away from him was tough, wait till you try to take away his computer. But what's happening is these seniors are opening up portals into their home that they would never let in the front door. And so you're much better off having a conversation about all the scams and frauds and exploitation that's going on out there. And it's almost like telling them 3 or 4 stories of here's what you got to watch out for, and they'll start realizing their vulnerability and how you can come alongside and help them rather than take over. I think that's the difference. And just start monitoring things, and we'll show you here shortly some of the tips that you can do along those lines.
Yeah. So I know that you're aware of a lot of these types of frauds and scams that are going on. Would you like to get into some of those with us? Any examples? Would you like to do that?
Well, I've got many. Just looking at the big ones. Of course, the romance scams have been around for quite some time. And those are just devastating. It's really targeting primarily the female demographic, widowed, divorced, single, 60 to 75 that are looking for romance one last time. And of course, that's been going on for years, coming from primarily, Nigeria. And in fact, I was on Dr. Phil Primetime, about 2 weeks ago on a romance scam. It's over $200,000 that this lady had already lost, and she was still convinced she was in love with this guy. And so, but the one that really is devastating, and this is fairly fresh, it's called pig butchering, and it's actually coming out of the Orient, and it's just the opposite. It's really targeting retired men with their nice big IRA rollover accounts, and it is Asian women that are young and look very prosperous. And what they do is get asked by the gentleman, how are you making your money? And it's cryptocurrency trading. And so they've got this template that lays over the trading platform, and they say, let's just try $10,000. And they show them a 15, 20% return. And the next thing you know, he's just pouring hundreds of $1,000s at these returns that he's not able to get in our current markets, which it should be a red flag immediately. But it's romance scams on steroids, basically. And so I've been engaged with both the FBI and Secret Service on some cases here in the Dallas area, and they are $1 million losses. One guy has not admitted to losing yet because he's still in love, but he's lost $2 million, and he sold his $4 million apartments and sending that over also. So just some dramatic losses there. Those are probably the biggies. But most people aren't going to get challenged with those. But it's really the phone calls and the texting that the normal senior is vulnerable to. Okay, and so we pretty much convinced everybody to quit answering the phone. Everything ought to roll to voicemail. 90% of scammers want to talk to a live person. So when your voicemail comes on, they hang up. So you're protecting yourself against 90% of those calls. And then if the calls that are left, the voicemail scares you or really causes some issues with you, then don't ever call that number back. Do never call a number that's left on your voicemail. Get the bank card out of your wallet. If it's Amazon or whomever, your account's frozen, you call them direct and find out what the problem is. And 98% of the time there is no problem. And so we've done that. But now texting, people don't realize that 98% of all texts are answered in 2 minutes of receipt. And so there's an urgency about your phone buzzing, on your desk or in your pocket, and you look at it. And now it's not only don't answer, but under no circumstances click on anything, because I don't want to get too deeply in some of the stories. We had some horrendous losses just with clicking on a supposed text from Geek Squad that saying there's a maintenance agreement due and your bank account's getting ready to be hit. And of course they call Geek Squad immediately or hit the text to fix the problem. And of course they're talking to a con artist, and they are groomed to believe that their account's in trouble and so forth. So those are the ones that are probably most top of mind right now, is the phone, the text, and so forth.
So how do you determine really what's real, what's not? Well, is there any guideline that you could give to say, hey, if this happens, like you just said, if you don't recognize the number, don't answer it. I'm sure there's settings I know that there's settings in the phone that, if they're not in the contact list, then it goes right into your voicemail. Your phone won't even ring, but a lot of people don't know how to do those settings. But how to, the average person who, let's say, is maybe getting older, but they're still pretty sharp. How do you determine what to ignore and what to react to?
Well, there's a lot of warning signs that something's coming from scammers. And if you want to use an alliteration, anytime someone says there's a problem, there's a problem in your account, there's a problem with this, or a prize. Okay, people just need to realize NFL, no free lunch. There aren't people out there just waiting to give them money. And the third P is pressure, to act urgently. There's something happening. Your Social Security number's been stolen, and so forth. You've got a problem with the IRS. And of course, these agencies never call. And that fools people, because it raises the anxiety up, 2 or 3 notches, because those are third rail issues. That, gosh, I've got a problem with my Social Security. I've got a problem with the IRS. And so it causes them not to think clearly. But any pressure that you got to fix this immediately, we know those agencies move very, very slow, and they don't move fast. And then they pretend to be an organization that you may know, and they're really not. And then the final P in that alliteration is pay. They're asking you to pay in weird, strange ways that you're not used to. I don't know, in your community where you are, these Bitcoin ATMs, they're proliferating around the DFW, Dallas-Fort Worth area, where you go to your bank and get $100 bills and put them in these Bitcoin machines and get a receipt, and that's what the scammers want you to share with them. And so you're trying to pay off a debt or to invest with Bitcoin and or even gold bars. And I won't get too deep in some of our cases, but I have a lady that was, worked in a bank all of her life and was an executive assistant, and she lost over $650,000 just being fooled by a scammer, and she was delivering gold bars in the middle of the night, and just, bizarre things like that. And so that's why you really need to watch, your parents, if you're a baby boomer, because the con artist will always isolate you, you don't need to tell anybody about this. I'm a government agent. If you do, we won't be able to help you anymore. A lot of people don't realize, and this is another thing that can be done. There are forms now with your banks, your credit unions, your investment accounts that are called trusted contact forms. And these institutions are wanting you to sign these, because what you're doing is telling them that if I act out of character, if I start wanting to wire money overseas, if I want to do something that's not normal and you suspect a scam, you have my permission to call this designated person in my family or friend that you just noticed something that, I'm acting out of character. And they won't tell anything about the account, but it kind of puts the kids or whoever you put down on alert that something's going on. And if you talk to your dad lately, if you talk to your mom lately, and that's one thing we're doing to try to stop things. And so more and more banks and investment houses are adopting these forms.
That's great.
That helps a lot. So those are a few
What's that
ideas.
called? What's that called again?
It's called a trusted contact form on your financial accounts. And it may be titled something different, but if you talk to your bank, they know exactly what you're talking about. And gotcha. I think we've got a lot of engagement in that in the past year or two. So,
okay. Well, Steve, we're going to take a real quick break, I promise, just to recognize our sponsor. And we come back, we're going to learn a little bit more about Senior Source and let people know more about what, some of the things that you're doing and how you could help. And I want to get into AI a little bit. We'll talk about that when we come back. All right. So do you know anyone who may be concerned about an older driver? Well, Senior Care Authority's Beyond Driving with Dignity program is a facilitated self-assessment program for older drivers. This program has been designed to serve as a vital tool to facilitate older drivers and their families as they make appropriate decisions regarding the future of one's safe driving career. If the individual is a safe driver, an advisor will provide him or her with strategies on how to remain a safe driver as they progress through the aging process. If driving retirement is the appropriate decision, then the individual and their family are offered possible alternatives, resources, and a specific plan to ensure a smooth and successful transition from the driver's seat to the passenger seat. So to learn more, go to www.beyonddrivingwithdignity.com or call 877-907-8841 to connect with a Senior Care Authority advisor in your area. So we are back with Steve Benton. Steve is a real specialists and dealing with elder financial safety. And so, Steve, talk to us a little bit more about the Senior Source and that organization. I know you're in the Dallas area, but what are the types of services you can provide and help people, certainly not only in Texas, but maybe even around the country?
Well, the Senior Source has been around for, believe it or not, 63 years. We were founded the same year as the Dallas Cowboys, so I'm sure that'll excite everybody on the call. But so we've been helping seniors a long, long time, and we are guardianship for a number of adults here in the Dallas County area. We are also the primary ombudsman for all the nursing homes and assisted living facilities here. So an agency of about 55 people. We do a number of things like that. We also offer caregiving, support to people that are trying to take care of their seniors. And so what happened back in 2014, we formed a collaboration with a grant with the district attorney's office and the Dallas County probate courts to address financial exploitation of seniors. And prior to that, we were operating in silos and not really getting much accomplished, but now we all work together. Of course, we have the prosecution arm with our DA partners. We have 2 full-time prosecutors, full-time investigators that do nothing but senior cases now. Of course, we work with the guardianship courts and probate courts. When they sense something that's going on in a will filing or something, they'll sometimes make referrals to us. And then the Senior Source, we're most on the prevention side, and we do a lot of education, a lot of talks, a lot of individual counseling. We're putting lives back together that have been scammed and defrauded and or exploited, and doing things like that. So been around a long time. We've been at this scams and frauds for about 10 years now.
Great. Well, thank you for all you do. So if somebody wanted to get some advice or talk to you, how would they reach out?
Well, they can certainly come into the Elder Financial Safety Center. We've got a robust website, and I don't know if it's as good as yours, Frank. It looks pretty, yeah, we got a great website there, but you can come in and kind of see all the things that we do and, click on and, ask for calls back for different situations. And again, I do mostly the intake of the scams and frauds and a few legal questions along the way. And so we're very accessible.
Great. And that website address is?
It is the Senior Source.
Great. .com.
Okay.
Yeah. Great.
Yeah. .com. Well, .org.
Oh, .org. So thesenioursource.org. And
right.
So I know we just touched upon a lot of the scams that are going out there. You get into it on the site as well?
Oh yeah. Yeah. And that's probably the fun. You read a little bit of my, background and resume, and the past 10 years, I've just been enjoying life. I was actually retired and volunteering at the Senior Source when we started up this collaboration. And it's just fun using all my experience and so forth to help people out. I'm moving from success to significance, and that's what's the real return for me, is people are in desperate situations and you're providing an answer. So it's a lot of fun.
Good for you. That's great. So AI. So, it's AI is doing some amazing things in a positive way, but anytime you come up with something in a positive way, there's always somebody that wants to take it and use it in a negative way. I would say from a scam standpoint, my opinion, this is going to get worse before it gets better. All right.
Yep.
Unfortunately, I don't know if you agree with me there, but talk to us about any experience thus far you've been having with that, and what any suggestions you have to our listeners.
Well, Frank, I totally agree with you. It's only going to get worse because it's just allowing people to be fooled so much easier. And you start with voice recognition. That's already just highly developed. And, a fun story, the brokerage firm that I keep my investments with, put in about 5 or 6 years ago, voice recognition, so they'd know it was me. And so now I'm going back to them saying, no, I don't want that clarification. I want that removed from my account, and let's check it out some other way, because now if somebody has my voice, they can get into my account, if you will. So that's kind of scary. The other thing is that you hear about the kidnappings, and that they scare you that your granddaughter's been kidnapped. And so what I always recommend is having a family password that goes all the way from the children up through the parents, up through the grandparents. Everybody knows this one password, and it may be something like popcorn, something easier to remember. And so if there's ever a situation where a grandchild is trying to talk to grandma, all she needs to do is say, what's our family password? And protects you from the con artists that don't have that password. So that's the suggestion.
No, I'm sure that happens. They probably just hang up the phone, right?
Exactly. Yeah. Another thing is, it was what's kind of tricky, one of the slides I use in our presentation is I have Amazon.com up there and two deals. Amazon.com, they look exactly the same, and one of them has an alphabet. On your computer you can do different types of languages and so forth. There's a Cyrillic alphabet out there, Cyrillic, where the A looks exactly like a regular English A. And so that little A in the middle of Amazon, if you click on the wrong Amazon.com, you're actually going to a scammer's website. Now that's getting scary. And so the old Ronald Reagan, trust but verify. I tell people now, you need to distrust everything. Don't believe anything that's coming through that computer screen. And if it causes you anxiety, if it scares you at all, go to the source. Never click on anything. Never return phone calls. Make sure you're going to the real website. Don't click on that one that's Amazon.com. It looks, you can't imitate Amazon.com. Well, you can. So you need to not click on that. You need to type in, in the URL, Amazon.com from your own computer. So that's a good example. Things that are going on.
Great. So just we got to finish up. This has been great, but just any words of wisdom to the adult children out there who have parents that are, getting into their 80s and they're worried. Just any words of wisdom to them.
Well, walk through that stiff arm that they're giving you and do it in a nice way. Don't come in with the takeover attitude with all three siblings surrounding mom saying it's time for us to rip all this out of your hands. Come alongside her. We're here to help you. Try to scare her a little bit about what's going on out there. And yes, she's being careful, but we're here to help you. Get the ability to observe the account almost daily. I mean, we all look at our bank accounts now, financial accounts almost on a daily basis. Who has use for bank statements anymore? So you need to catch it, nip it in the bud, as Barney Fife said. And I guess the last thing I say is don't ever use gift cards. Gift cards is always a scam. So, I mean, you can buy them for your grandchildren, but anybody that you don't know that's asking for payment in gift cards, it's automatic scam. And one of the things we do in our audience when we're speaking is the old middle school cheer. When I say gift card, you say scam. And about the third time they shout out scam, I think they got it. And that's the thing they remember from my presentation. So there you go.
Great. Steve Benton, the Senior Source. Thank you so much for joining us, Steve. Really appreciate it. Check it out at theseniorsource.org. And thank you all for joining us on Boomers Today. Really appreciate it. Be safe. Talk to everybody next week.
You've been listening to Boomers Today with Frank Sampson. To learn more about today's show, visit boomerstodayradio.com and join us next time for another edition of Boomers Today.